Hey, this is Nic and Jamie Cooper from Hudson Blue. If you want to learn how to use your small axe to build an empire, you should be listening to the Small Axe podcast with our good friend Nico.
Hey, guys, this is your boy Nico, your host of the Small Axe Podcast. Hey, this show is dedicated to helping you become the best multifamily real estate investor that you can be. Now, whether you want to be an active or a passive investor, this show will give you all the resources you need to help sharpen your axe and build your own personal empire. So you know what? Sit back and relax and enjoy this show. And hey, if you find value in it, I would love for you to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. I love you guys. Hey, Small Axe community. It is your boy Nico, and today I'm hanging out with two cool people, not just one. I got Nic and Jamie Cooper hanging out with me, and if you don't know who they are, you're about to learn who they are. Really good people. I actually met them through the Jake and Gino community and saw them on, I guess it was like a webinar that they put on talking about one of the deals that they had done. I think it was one of their first bigger deals, and Nic really went deep into how he did it and how he found it and how he structured it. And I was enthralled the entire time, and I said, I got to talk to these two. Really cool power couple. So without further ado, let me get them on. Nic and Jamie, welcome.
Hey, Nico.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys on here. It's been a while, a long time coming, and I'm glad to have you guys here. So before we get started, I would love for you to take a couple of minutes, one of you or both of you, to talk about your journeys and how you got to where you are today.
Perfect. You can start, babe.
Well, I mean, I only got here because of you. How we started was Nic and I were dating several years back, and he was a badass helicopter pilot in the Navy when we met, and super badass when you're single and you're a bachelor. Not as cool when you have no idea where your then boyfriend, now husband, is in the middle of the night, because he's doing special ops operations and flying in the middle of the night and landing on boats in the middle of the ocean and having people rappel out of his airplane, which sounds so cool and is, but it's also very dangerous. And I wanted to, build a life with someone. And so I asked him, what his long-term plan was for his future. He was already in the military at that point, almost 20 years. And I asked him, what's your plan going forward? And then,
yeah, I think pretty much as a man, you kind of have that moment of truth where you're like, oh, this is someone I have to keep around, and I wanted to make a life. Because I mean, I think like most people realize is that everything's going to end. So the military, it was the twilight of my career. I had to go to something else. And she really made me think about what I need to do next. And so what I did, this was almost over 4 years ago now, almost to the day. And I was like, I got to figure this out. And what I did is I dove into multifamily. And multifamily, I realized so I was like most folks in the military, is that you move around a lot and kind of by default, you acquire some houses and you become a landlord. And I did the math one day on my last property I had left here in San Diego, which is a very expensive market. And I looked at it and was like, oh, this thing is making me, after all expenses and mortgage, $150 a month. And I was like, and I did the math real quick. I'm like, well, I have about $350,000 in equity in this. That's not a very good return. And I also realized that at 17 years of doing the single family, I only had a few units. And how do I really make this into a business that can sustain you? So instead of being a hobby, I want to make it into a business. So I looked at multifamily was the way because of the scalability. So I got intense, took huge action, and I flew out to Ohio 4 or 5 times, I think in about 6 weeks. And I drove around the state, and I took time off of work, sold my place in San Diego, and I found 24 unit in Ohio. And 4 months later, I had 24 units from, say, decision to sell it to close, and now it's mine. So fast forward about 2.5 years later, we're refinanced out of that property. I think I mentioned that on the webinar we were on about a year ago, and we got out $696,000. So I have no money in that right now, and it's still paying me $6,000 a month. That's after debt service, and expenses. So I was like, this is the way. So after that refinance is when I realized like, I need to retire. It's time. So I retired. And since that time, about a year ago, I retired. It's 4 deals and they're all been syndications. So
Wow.
152 units and about 14 million under management. So that's where we're at today.
That's incredible. You know, so many people can resonate with that story. We tend to, step one, you have to understand or feel that real estate is good for you, right? Or good investment, right? And sometimes the easiest way in is to get a single family. Now, when you're looking at scaling that, you mentioned, I mean, if you're making $150 a month after all is said and done, how many do you need to get? How many acquisitions do you need to close on, right? For that to become financial freedom. So you then changed your mindset. I love it. You thought a little bit bigger and you took crazy action, man. You drove, you went to Ohio, you know, that's incredible. And you got a 24 unit within 4 months. That's wild. Were you nervous about that?
I think I was nervous about more about
not
doing something. Like I had to do something. I knew what I would put my mind into would succeed. And I just did my research and I knew multifamily was the way. I could have picked mobile home parks, could have picked RV parks. I picked this one. I think that as long as you have, like my wife is my reason why, doing girlfriend at the time. To be straight, I had a property I was selling. So I did an exchange. So I did have a timeline. And this was me going back 4.5 years ago. At that time, I just read some books, some podcasts, and, Bigger Pockets. And that was my knowledge level. And I think that what really let me scale up quicker was I joined a mastermind, and even more important, I hired a coach.
Yeah. And at the time, I thought that it was kind of crazy because I was like, wait, you just bought an apartment complex, which is obviously not a small, price tag. And you're jumping 2 feet in with this, and you're buying an apartment complex A, and then B, you're buying one out of state. And now C, he's talking to me about joining this mastermind and then hiring a coach. I was like, you are spending so much money on something that we don't even know if this is going to work out. I'm definitely more of a
cautious.
I'm very cautious and I'm a saver. And I definitely had the mentality, of a lot of people, which is like, you go to school, you put your money in a 401k, you're very cautious with your investments, you let them grow, you have time, a little bit each month. And then maybe in 30, 40, 50 years, maybe then it'll and so that's what I grew up with. And I think that's what a lot of people's kind of aperture for quote unquote investing and saving. And so this to me felt very scary and very uncomfortable. And like, okay, you just sold a home in San Diego to buy an apartment complex. Now you're spending all this money on a mastermind and a coach. Like, this seems kind of insane.
Almost like a Ponzi scheme or some sort of cult following, right? You don't even know what you're getting into. Who are these people that you're jumping into with, you're paying all this money for?
Yeah. And I was like, man, are you trying to just drown your bank accounts? Like, what are you doing? But he's a very calculated risk taker. And I think that comes from obviously flying a helicopter and knowing your job is to A, fly the helicopter, and B, land it. And he did that successfully for 22 years before retiring. So he's not someone who ever jumped in a helicopter without a plan on how to land. But I think more than anything, knowing that he does take calculated risks, I knew that, yes, it felt very out of my comfort zone and crazy, but he was setting himself up for success because he was hiring and aligning with people who were a few steps ahead of him by hiring a coach and then joining a mastermind that has people who are successfully doing this and offered so much value.
So cool. So cool. I love it. Yeah. And I obviously believe in you guys and your vision as well. And what you've been able to accomplish is proof of pudding, right? But as you're talking, I wanted to say that helicopter flying is probably one of the coolest things ever. And when I was growing up, it really is. I'm a little bit jealous here. I got to be honest, Nick. But when I was growing up, my father would always say, he was from Spain, straight out of Spain. He passed away in 2010. And he was always like, I would always ask him what he wanted for his birthday. And he said, I want a helicopter. He would tell me he wanted a helicopter. I was like, Dad, why do you want a helicopter? And then when we would see them flying, I was like, those are really cool. Now I see why you wanted a helicopter. And I remember in this Boy Scout magazine or something in school, looking at like you can buy like plans or something to build a helicopter. And I would stare at this forever. It was the coolest thing. It was in elementary school. I remember sitting down and looking at this magazine, looking at these helicopters that were like personal helicopters or handmade or something. I don't remember exactly, but I was so, just enthralled by them.
I mean, Nico, you build things. You could totally build a helicopter.
Oh my God. Don't get
I see you building things on your videos.
Is that going to happen?
This should be your next thing.
Oh boy. Well, first I have to finish.
Wooden helicopters.
Yeah.
Helicopter, yes.
I bet you there's a way to do it. Okay, now you got me thinking. Awesome.
That'd be cool.
All right, cool. Well, I mean, you might have just inspired my next project. So right back into this now with the multifamily, you still own that 24 unit. You mentioned you have, because you pulled a bunch of capital out, which is incredible. And then you said you have a few more syndications. That first deal wasn't a syndication. Is that correct?
Correct. It was just a joint venture with another partner. So.
And now you're in syndications. Do you prefer one of the other, or is it just a tool in the tool belt?
I think it's a tool in the toolbox. It depends on the deal. So a smaller deal is a lot easier to take on with just a partner, because this deal at the time seemed very large, but it was $762,000 for a 24 unit. So that's about $32,000 a door. So to give you an idea, like my last rental in San Diego sold for about $600,000.
One home.
One place. So I think for something smaller, the joint venture works out really well. I think once you get above probably, and I'll use just a fuzzy math here, about $1.5 million, $2 million, you start to syndicate, at least for where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I agree. Because then you're going to have to bring on too many partners, and then it becomes muddled whose job is to do what. And then you could be at risk of running into some issues with the SEC. I like it. Now, when you say 30K a door, and then you had to do the refi, what were the terms like at that point? I guess this was about a year ago or so. Or
about a year and a half ago. So when we got the loan, it was 2019, and it was community bank, 25-year amortization. The loan was about 4.6. Well, it was 4.6%. And so we refinanced last year. End of last year, it closed beginning of 22, I think it was, and got it for 3.78. So it was a 30-year AM. It's pretty small balance. So it's agency debt. So nice, favorable terms, government backed, and 3 years of interest only. So those are the good old days, Nico.
They're done for now, but to be continued at some point. Now, I wanted to ask you about that. What part of Ohio is it in? Because there's different, cities some are very attractive, some are scary for some of us, but feel like Ohio is a wonderful, wonderful state to invest.
I think so too, just because the cost of entry is definitely a lot lower than, obviously I'm in California, you're in the East Coast as well. So you can actually get properties there that are cash flowing, and you can actually purchase those. So it's in Lake County, which is just east of Cleveland, about 25 minutes from downtown. So I'm just out of Cleveland County, and you get a little bit favorable, a little better taxes in that county. It's a little smaller. And it's like the classic mom and pop C-class neighborhood. Everyone there is pretty much blue collar worker, and they're hard workers. And it's just, that's where we go. It's where there's going to be cash flow.
Yep.
Yeah. So my buddy, Jake Oreskovich, moved there to specifically, continue his investing career and find cash flowing assets. I mean, that's really where you go. It's a cash flow market. Now, have you run into any issues with occupancy, or how has occupancy been throughout this time? And I'll stop there because I have other questions.
Yeah, I think I'll take this one here. We have a very experienced property manager that has been doing this for a while. We started out having a lot of Section 8. So probably about 40% of the property was Section 8. So during COVID, we
purchased it,
yeah. So during COVID, we had no issues with the rent collections at all. And we implemented our rent bump. So just to give you an idea, the average rents were less than $420 for these. They're all one bedrooms, a few studios. And that was even there super low. So we're able to implement the rent bumps and do our increases. And right now the rents are almost $740 average. So
wow, that's
just
awesome.
3 years, it's been a pretty big increase. And that's still, the middle of the market right now.
And we usually have a waiting list. The property is a really, really great little property. It's a bunch of duplexes. So each of the properties are almost like your own little home, because there is only just 2 units in each building. So people really gravitate towards them. And the occupancy has consistently, stayed definitely above 90%, which is really nice.
That's incredible. I look at deals occasionally in Cleveland, although I'm not versed in Cleveland at all, and I wouldn't say that, but I look at deals occasionally, and then if I see something that I kind of like, I'll shoot it over to my friend Jake, who's boots on the ground there, and he'll say, yes or no, and block by block in Cleveland proper can be a huge difference of demographics and also income and property type. And so I would have to be careful.
I think I agree. Cleveland, definitely you can be in one part of the town and then Shaker Heights is a nice area, but it'll pull in some demographics from the neighborhood next door and it's going to make it look, not as good, but actually is good and vice versa. So it's like, it is like most real estate is going to be local.
Yeah. Awesome. So that brings me to another question. What is the vintage of that particular property?
1960. So it's older.
Cool. Got it. And then you went on to do a few syndications. Is that right?
We did just what was the next year, right?
Yeah. So we've done 4 syndications since then. And we, went from doing a JV, and Nic had been asked that same year if we wanted to participate and lead the syndication for another property. And at that time, Nic was like, no, I want to learn and be hands-on with this JV deal. I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know there's things that I just don't have experience with yet in multifamily that I want to get my hands dirty with my own property, my own money. And if I'm going to make mistakes, make them there before I do a syndication and take on investors. And at the time I was kind of like, oh, well, this is an opportunity. Like, you're passing it up. But now in hindsight, I see the value in waiting and getting a little more experience, because this is very different than having a single family rental or even a few like Nic had for 17 years. And there's so many different dynamics in multifamily that over the course of that year, we both learned, doing the walkthroughs and seeing just the day-to-day, like how to operate a property as a business versus a single family home.
Yeah. And I think one thing to add to what Jamie's saying here is that, you read a lot of books about this stuff and it doesn't really make sense until you actually are doing it. So I think it's like, yes, the most important thing you can do, yes, you need to have some baseline education, but you need to get in there and start making offers and start running these deals. Then all these education you've been looking at will make a lot more sense to you. I mean, a lot more valuable. You can like, because right now, like if I don't need to learn about bank financing when I was starting out, like, yes, it's important to know it, but you're probably a few months away from doing that.
Yeah. If you can't find a property, you don't need bank financing. Or if you don't know how to underwrite, bank financing doesn't matter.
It's funny. So Marco posted something like that in the chat where, taking action is so much more valuable. I think it was one of his, I forget, but it was a reel, but you have to take action in order to understand what you're learning. You have to be in it in order to understand what you're learning. So I really like that. And surprisingly, guys, I spoke with Josh Rusin today, had a nice conversation with him. And we were talking about something similar where kind of like dividing the roles of people and designating roles so that people who don't have to learn the lending side, obviously you get a broad general education of it, but you can have somebody on your team designated for that who is going to go a mile deep right into that specific topic. Awesome stuff. I wanted to ask another question before we moved on from this first property, because I feel like it's important. How often do you travel out to visit the property?
It really just depends. Once you get it stabilized, you don't have to be there that often.
Yeah. We do surprise visits at all our properties quarterly on a minimum, and especially the new properties. I mean, Nic has been to our Texas property 14 times in the last 12 months. Like, we are a very hands-on operator. I
live in California.
Yeah. And so it's not easy. It's like 2 planes and then a 3-hour drive. It's definitely not convenient by any means, but Nic does this full time. And that's the benefit to working with an operator that is running the deal and does this full time, because when there's an issue, he jumps on a plane. Like, we love and, we hired people who we know could run the job, and property management we trust. And also at the end of the day, we're the owners and it's our responsibility. So for us to, make sure that the property is running smoothly and we're able to come through with those returns, that means sometimes getting on a plane at 7 a.m. when you found out about an issue at 10 p.m. the night before. So to answer your question, it totally varies on the property, but Nic does travel a good amount.
Awesome. And it's important to note for people that are looking to invest out of state, like the majority of us, that Nic mentioned something in the beginning of his speech there, that you don't have to go that much once stabilized. Although, Jamie, you're referring to as well, that once things are stabilized, I love that you guys still go there for surprise visits to check in on how, things are going on, because you never know. This isn't the property manager. If you have a third party property manager, they are not on your team necessarily, right? Their interests might not be 100% aligned with you. So by going there and visiting and popping in, it just kind of keeps them on their toes. I actually did it this past weekend in Florida, and I showed up to on site just to kind of, walk the property with my daughter. Surprisingly, it was her first time. She was loving it. And my manager was on site. I was like, this is perfect. He's doing his job. He's working hard. I love how this is, working out.
That's
and
awesome.
It was cool.
I love that.
You're always going to find something when you go.
Yeah.
There's 100% every time I go there, there's some type of hole in the process or the plan or something that needs to get worked
favorite
on.
thing to do is go to any of our properties after the sun has gone down and sit in the car for an hour, or a vacant unit with the door open, and literally just look and see who's coming, who's going, and who's bringing animals in and out. The amount of animals that have not been on the tenants, on the rent roll that are accounted for is countless. Like without fail, he finds one animal, whether it be a new cat, a new dog, whatever, a guinea pig on a leash, like truly every single time without fail. So you always find something that
go at nighttime.
Yeah.
Always go at nighttime.
Awesome advice. When I was there, I saw a bunch of dog poop and I was like, wait a minute, how many do we have on this rent roll?
Exactly.
All right. I love it. All right. So with syndications now, what are your main roles in these syndications, or because there are different roles and we always have to separate and designate roles with our team members. Are there certain roles that you gravitate towards, either of you or both of you, certain roles that you don't enjoy as much? And how are you enjoying the syndication process in general?
Well, Jamie, for the most part, is the underwriter. No, just kidding. She's
right.
the capital raiser.
We wouldn't have any deals if I was the underwriter. Nic is the nerdy numbers man, and I really just enjoy raising money and doing some of our interactions with our investors, the contributors that have invested in our properties. But Nic definitely takes 100% of the lead on anything related to the numbers, anything related to underwriting. It is a very not equal distribution of duties. He does a lot.
The results, aren't always equal too, I think Jane puts a lot of effort into the capital raise portion, but without the money, there's no deal. Doesn't matter how much my underwriting looks good if there's no capital to raise. So every part is as integral, as mine. When I do from the underwriting to due diligence, to the inspections, to coordinating with banks, to coordinating with property management companies. And then the really hard part is when the business plan is implemented. That's when you close the deal and you have to run it. So this thing doesn't just go on autopilot. And that's the biggest thing I can say is the capital raising for the most part is over once the deal is closed, usually. But the asset management is there till the very end, and then even after a bit.
And it really depends on the property. Some properties are a lot more of a day-to-day time commitment, time suck, take up your energy and time. And some of our other properties, they're so plug and play, and there's just systems that are like an oiled machine that work really well. And we have across the board, we've implemented the same systems, but there's different people that are running them, and it's a different market. We have properties in different markets and things are executed differently. So it's one of those things where I think with syndication, you could end up doing a lot more than just the one role that you may have, committed and thought you were the best at, because it's kind of one of those things where if you're running a syndication, it's all hands on deck and it's whatever's needed. You may have signed up to be the money raiser or the person running point on underwriting, but at the end of the day, it's your job to complete the whole return. So however you have to do that, whatever role you have to step into, you better get good at it.
Oh, I love it. You guys are killing it. So excited. This just gets me amped up. And these conversations are great. I lean more towards Nic's roles, whereas Jamie outsourced that and would give away an arm and a leg for somebody who can raise capital. I just don't enjoy it. I'm trying to work my own systems, and I've been doing this now for 3+ years, trying to build the processes for raising capital. I don't know why I despise it. I don't know, but I appreciate
Limiting
people like
belief. You could totally do it. I promise you. I have helped people now. Nic does take on a few students every year that he coaches. A lot of them end up being people who were in the military or are in the military and want to segue out to have more time freedom with their family and stuff. And I love talking to them about money raising, because that is something that so many people I think are afraid of. And it's such a limiting belief, or it's something that just makes them really uncomfortable. And you'd be shocked within your network how many people are interested in being, participating and being a part of an investment. You just have to bring it up. It's so much more accessible, and there's so many people in your life that you wouldn't even have to sell, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I need to think of it that way. And Jamie, I want to stick with you for a second here. Now, in your first, I guess, foray into this, when Nic buys 24 units and you're like, what is this crap? I don't know what I'm getting into. And then he's in a mastermind and you're like, what? He's paying money for this? Now you're on the flip side and you're trying to, encourage people to, or enlighten people rather, the benefits of investing. So how does that conversation begin with somebody who might have been at your stage in the beginning?
I think the biggest thing, it's easy to talk now because I have results in front of me. If you don't have results, it's very challenging for someone like myself, who's very much a skeptic and is like, what's the scheme? When's the shoe going to drop? I was very hesitant. I think participating in a mastermind with so many like-minded people that are go-getters and wanted to have more time freedom and may love their W-2, but they love their time and want to spend time with their family on their terms. And I saw so much of that with the mastermind and with the coach that Nic hired, that I definitely saw my little parts of myself where I was like, oh, that person kind of reminds me of myself. Like, this must not be that crazy. And I also saw that it worked, that this was a vehicle for so many people to really gain that ability of financial freedom / time freedom, and when I say that, I also don't want to come across wrong and say that Nic doesn't work very hard. He works way more now than when he was in the military. But the caveat is it's on his terms. He doesn't have to ask. We went to Mexico for the day last weekend. When he was in the military, he would have had to submit paperwork to tell them he was going to Mexico for the day. We don't have to do that. He and I are taking a 3-week trip to Europe this summer. That's something that was near impossible when someone else owns your time in the military and you're deploying and you're getting duties and jobs on their terms, not on yours. So I think Nic works way more now, but he's working for a much higher wage when we, are putting that effort in. It's going to us and our family and our investors versus just to the government. And he doesn't get to own his time.
Wow. I love it. So well put. Thank you, Jamie. That's awesome. Where are you guys going in Europe? Everywhere?
We are going
to Italy first to do hike in the Dolomites. And we always want to do those hikes.
Always have wanted to do the Italian Alps hiking.
Awesome.
We're doing that.
And then go to Greece for some island hopping. And then we're going to be there for about almost 2 weeks in Greece, and then head into Amsterdam for about 3-4 days and flying home.
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm excited for that. So I've never been to Italy or Greece. I hear they're both beautiful, and or Amsterdam, and I hear it's wonderful there too. One of my buddies goes there a lot. He travels for work frequently and he loves it there. I'm in the midst of planning a 2-week trip to Spain with my daughter by the end of the summer. Yeah, that's where my family lives. I go there frequently.
Where in Spain?
In Galicia, the northwest region of Spain, right near Portugal.
Awesome. I used to live in Spain years ago, but I love Spain and I love Portugal. My brother's actually moving there this summer. A lot of Americans are moving to Portugal right now. The tax benefits are huge.
That's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, maybe I could connect with your brother. I think some people that I know also have recently been to Portugal, loving it. I love the food. My name is Portuguese. Salgado is a Portuguese name.
Okay.
Because we're literally 10 minutes from the border of Portugal. But yeah, from Spain. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right. So let's now envision what the rest of 2023 is going to look like for you guys, Nic and Jamie. What are you planning on, or do you have bigger goals for the next 5 years? Let's talk a little bit about the future, and it can be small and close goals or big visionary goals.
I'd say for the near future, I said we're going to, obviously we're doing our delayed honeymoon because I took her to a real estate conference right after our wedding.
This is true.
This is
4 days after we got married, we flew to Florida and went to a real estate conference to hang out with, I think you were there, and a bunch of other awesome people from our mastermind, which no regrets, but also I have reminded him like monthly that we still hadn't gone on a honeymoon for the last years.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Okay, cool.
And then I think for us for the next 5 years is that we're going to be looking at transitioning more to like having more partners and being more in-house as far as like, not just me doing all the jobs and just being, I think just hiring some help.
Yeah. And I think more so connecting and partnering with people who really excel in their superstar position in, multifamily real estate, whether that's you're a superstar in running the day-to-day, you're a superstar in finding deals. Great. That isn't always our superstar strength. So being able to put money and experience and partner up with people who are absolute, superstar finders of deals.
Yeah. And I think going from, you've probably read that book, Who Not How, is finding more of the who's and not being that how. So that's what my biggest goal is in the near term, is to do more of that.
Nic does everything right now.
Oh man, I know, me too. I'm in the same boat as you, Nic, and I'm trying to do everything, but I think slowly I will eventually kind of navigate into a role that is best suited for me. My team will be more solid. Everything will just kind of fall into place. And I love that you guys are doing this for life. I love that you enjoy the time freedom, that you're creating this time freedom for you and your family and your loved ones, and just being the examples of what it can be, because it is something amazing. And we all fell into this because we believe in it and we're making it happen. So I truly appreciate that. Let's jump into our final question. Then we're going to get the audience, some form of contacting you, and then we'll wrap it up. So let's imagine it was 100 years from now, Nic and Jamie. You have great grandchildren. They're so happy and they want to write a book about you and your lives. What would you want them to title this book?
I would say, I think about these type of things, not this exact question often, but that whole saying is that, you're loved in one generation, and then you're remembered in the second generation, forgotten in the third. So how are you remembered? I think it's a legacy that you can leave lessons behind. And that would be, having that wealth to be able to pass it on so you can do something with it. I think not just do nothing, but do something with it. I think that would be the best thing you could do for your family, is set them up to set a legacy.
That's awesome. Give them something that they can then be empowered with and impactful on the rest of the world. I love it. You can't leave them with nothing, my man. All right. So let's now get the listeners some form of contacting you, and however you're comfortable doing that, whether that be an email address, a phone number, or a website, or whatever.
Sure. I'll get my phone number out. So it's 619-990-8848.
And then Facebook is Nic, Nic Cooper. And our Instagram is Hudson, like the river, HUDSON.
You got it.
Blue, like the color. MF stands for multifamily.
Not what you think it does.
And yeah, you can find us on any of that. You could, Facebook, email.
Facebook's probably easiest.
Yeah,
and
Facebook's
then
easy.
phone, text. So
Nic Cooper or Jamie Cooper should pop up.
Awesome. Well, I am going to be talking with you guys more. And it's funny, we've been in the same circle for a couple of years now. We never truly got in depth, and I'm so happy that we got the the chance to do it on air and just kind of learn a little bit about you guys. I'm really, really I'm jazzed up right now. I want to go do a deal.
So do it.
Let's do one together. Let's do it.
Awesome. It was really a pleasure getting to know a little bit more about you guys and your journey. And I truly know that my audience is going to get, a ton of value from this. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Nico. Appreciate it. This is so fun.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Hey, Small Axe community. I would like to say thank you for listening to another episode of this podcast, where we show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. Now, if you like what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you could leave me a 5-star rating and write a written review. Hey, let's take it one step further and share this podcast with someone that you feel could benefit from it. And until the next episode, keep sharpening those axes.